It all begins with a view of the great planet Earth. Although it is actually an illustration on the walls of a space-themed restaurant, there, the eldest Olga Solis looks through the menu while trying to encourage her nephew Elio to eat something since the boy is going through a period of deep sadness after the loss of his parents. He tries to distract himself with his toys, and his aunt Olga has decided to put aside her aspirations in an astronaut program in order to take care of him. While she comments on how happy she feels to share this new stage together, she realizes that Elio has disappeared. The boy has begun to walk around the place, watching other children have fun with their families. At one point, he is attracted to a restricted area, and upon entering, he comes across a space that has not yet been inaugurated, dedicated to sowing wonder and curiosity about the universe. There, the attractions pose the question that has accompanied humanity since ancient times: are we really alone in the cosmos? Voyager is a probe created to broadcast a message throughout the universe in all possible languages with the purpose of establishing contact with any civilization existing beyond Earth. With each word heard, Elio becomes completely immersed in the idea that this machine travels through outer space looking for someone on some distant world who can confirm that we are not alone. However, his aunt finds him moments later, desperate for having searched the entire restaurant. Although the only thing Elio answers is a question: is there really life beyond the stars? Years pass, and I'm Going to Yesterday continues its wandering journey through the galaxy until finally, the message sent from Earth seems to have been received by extraterrestrial life. Meanwhile, time also passes on Earth. Our young protagonist has grown up and has become obsessed with the idea of contacting some form of life beyond the planet. He spends most of his time trying to be noticed by beings from other worlds by making huge drawings in the sand on the beach. To do this, sunscreen becomes essential since he must endure long hours under the sun in addition to dealing with tourists who step on his creations and seagulls that try to steal his food. Little by little, our protagonist has been discarding beaches where his attempts have failed. In order to continue with his important mission, he has begun to skip classes without that his aunt knows, especially when she must be absent for long periods due to her work. Even so, Elio is not discouraged and continues waiting to be abducted, spending entire nights under the stars until one day sleep overcomes him and he falls asleep on the beach. But suddenly a green light on his face wakes him up. It is not a UFO but another boy interested in joining the amateur radio club of which he is president and also the only member. Bryce introduces himself and shows him an old radio that he has slightly modified. Immediately, our protagonist takes it to combine it with his own and increase its power. Once he succeeds, he asks him to leave, assuring him that he no longer needs anything else from him. However, Bryce wants to know where the rest of the club is. Shortly after, Bryce's friend Caleb appears, who had decided to accompany him. After a prolonged greeting between the two, which Elio tries to join without much success, Caleb asks him about his hat, but our protagonist, ashamed of his own interests, tries to dismiss them. Noticing this, Bryce whispers to his friend to act delicately because Elio is the boy who lost his parents. Just at that moment when he tries to intervene, the radio begins to emit sound for the first time in a long time. He immediately tries to get closer, but Caleb also becomes interested and both struggle for control of the device. In the middle of the struggle, Elio ends up with an injured eye and the radio breaks. This infuriates the boy so much that he tries to confront Caleb, and just when the tension escalates, the police appear. When his aunt Olga arrives to pick him up, Elio realizes that Bryce and Caleb, also military relatives, are in trouble and that Caleb is planning revenge. Doctors have placed an eye patch on Elio that he must wear for 2 weeks. Olga wants to know what happened, but when the boy does not cooperate, she takes him to her office and asks him to remain still while she attends an emergency meeting. There, a possible discovery related to extraterrestrial life has been reported, which immediately attracts the attention of our protagonist. Determined not to be left out, he hides inside a can of trash to sneak into the room and witness what happens. At the meeting, Melmac shows the soldiers that someone or something in the stars has received the Voyager Golden Record and has sent exactly the same message in response. They consider that they should respond immediately since it is a historical event, the first contact with an extraterrestrial entity. But Olga, far from being excited, asks them to leave and reminds them that they are only orbital analysts, not responsible for responding to messages. As soon as they leave the room, Elio leaves his hiding place, approaches the microphone, and responds to the message. He introduces himself as a creative, hard-working, and very muscular person. He expresses his enthusiasm to meet them and begs them to come for him. Finally, he uploads the message, and it is soon sent. His action causes a failure in the electrical system of the military facilities. Olga instantly understands who caused it. When she finds her nephew, she tries to communicate with her superiors by phone, while Helio wanders around the house preparing for his great journey. He must choose between fruits, cutlery that cannot be used as weapons, and capes that hide his desperation to meet the aliens. However, his aunt manages to get his attention and tells him that he will not go to space. She is furious since his actions almost cost her his job and suggests sending him to summer camp, but Elio believes that she just wants to get rid of him. Our protagonist responds that he does not want to make friends or have fun, that all he wants is to find someone among the 500 million planets out there who loves him because he feels that not even his aunt appreciates him, and even assures that she is not his true family. His words deeply hurt Olga, who before leaving reminds him that his life is on Earth, not in the stars. That night, Elio accidentally overhears his aunt enrolling him in camp. Although she does not like the idea, she never imagined that her life would end up dedicated to taking care of her nephew so suddenly. Knowing this breaks the boy's heart, who tries to cope with his sadness in silence. Early in the morning, Olga takes him to camp. When Elio sees the other boys playing, he immediately understands that it is not a place for him. He continues to be distant with his aunt, and shortly after, alone together, he discovers that Bryce and Caleb is also there and is still upset about being punished because of him. That night while he is in his tent, he hears noises outside. He soon realizes that it is the other boys trying to get revenge. Before they manage to scare him, Elio decides to run away and enters the dark forest to escape. Meanwhile, at work, Olga detects satellite interference. Just as she was about to write to her nephew to find out about him, strange messages appear on the monitors forming the image of a still unexplained planet. When the computers restart, they show the Voyager probe and dozens of files and then demand that they send them their leader. For his part, our protagonist tries to hide but is soon discovered. However, his attention is diverted by a strange light on the horizon that seems to be approaching. Just as he is about to be hit, something emerges from the sea and stops time. Even the drops of water in front of him remain suspended in the air, just like the other boys. In front of him, a floating diamond-shaped object shines in the air until an intense green light illuminates it completely. Elio immediately understands what that means. Finally, the aliens have come for him, and I couldn't be more excited for his fate. No sooner have they taken him than they disappear into the sky. He embarks on a strange interdimensional journey until he reaches a kind of cabin where a tiny creature examines his body and provides him with a translator to facilitate communication. This liquid supercomputer introduces itself, although its name is indecipherable to the human ear. When the gravity of the place is adjusted, the boy falls face down to the ground. Soon they begin their journey, and Helio is welcomed into the Communityverse, an intergalactic organization made up of the most advanced species in the cosmos dedicated to the exchange of knowledge. There he meets viscous beings of all sizes and colors from different planets. He introduces himself as Helio Solis from the planet Earth, and they tell him that he could join their community if he gains the approval of the council, and this news could not excite him more. Every second in that place is fascinating to him. So much gravitational technology and cosmic artifacts leave him breathless because he never imagined anything like this. He always knew that this was his destiny. Ambassador Helix assures him that they have been looking for him ever since they found the small ship with its message referring to the Voyager probe. In the universe, they were intrigued to meet the species that created such an artifact, and after great efforts they managed to receive their answer. However, there is a problem. They believe that Elio is the leader of planet Earth. The conversation is interrupted when the ambassadors are called before the presence of Lord Griggan, an imposing extraterrestrial creature who seeks to convince the Communityverse to form an alliance that will make them invincible against any threat. However, many of Lord Griggan warns that if he is not allowed to join, he will destroy them without further ado. He withdraws. Panic takes hold of everyone. They immediately begin preparations to flee to the edge of the cosmos and turn off the lights as a method of camouflage. Elio asks if he can go with them, but they respond that due to the crisis they cannot accept new candidates. They assure him that they could contact him in a few thousand years. However, Ilias knows that returning to his life on Earth is a terrible idea, especially after having seen everything. That in a desperate act, he claims that he can speak with Griggan and resolve the situation. Since his life has been marked by conflicts that he has had to face on his own, he shows his scar on his face as proof of his past struggles. His bravery catches the attention of several ambassadors who feel it might be time to stop running. As a reward, they offer him to become an official member of the Communityverse if he can resolve the conflict with Lord Griggan, because he will be away from his planet for a long time. They extract a sample of Elio's DNA to create a clone that can assume his responsibilities as leader of Earth. At first, the copy is quite gelatinous and strange, but when he manages to stand up, Elio is surprised to see that it is identical to him. Before leaving, The clone asks him if he wants something in particular to happen on Earth, or if he should continue without self-esteem and striving to fit in. Our protagonist replies that it is normal and that he should just not do anything strange. Without further ado, the clone takes his place on Earth, allowing Elio to continue with his mission. With no time to waste, the boy begins to gather information to negotiate with an evil military leader. While on Earth, his Aunt Olga is hysterical upon learning that her nephew was involved in a fight at the camp where he was supposed to be having fun. However, Olga soon begins to notice that something is not right. When he tells them about the strange events at his work and the possibility of extraterrestrial life, the supposed Helio shows no interest. Meanwhile, Lord Gregan approaches the community-verse. Before he arrives, the ambassadors decide to send the leader of Earth to confront him along with his troops. Elio tries to get ahead using a high-tech spaceship to reach Gregan and begin negotiations. Despite his nerves, he remains firm and asks to be taken to the leader, who, upon seeing him, admits that he looks quite weak. Our protagonist tries to negotiate with him, but Gregan confesses that the members of the universe see him as a monster and constantly reject him. Given this, Elio suggests that he stop wasting time trying to become part of a community that does not value him and instead look for other intergalactic allies who appreciate him as he is. However, the conversation takes an unexpected turn when the subject of Lord Gregan's son comes up. Elio makes an unfortunate comment implying that perhaps he has no control over it, which enrages the intergalactic emperor. Gregan takes him prisoner and locks him in his ship. There, Elio believes he has come to an end. However, when he accidentally throws the skull of a strange non-human skeleton against one of the bars, he discovers that it is loose. He quickly deduces that he could use the ship's gravitational technology to escape. Elio immediately floats through the air until he reaches the hatch, through which he manages to crawl in search of Gregan. Although the task is complicated, as he falls through a strange void, he becomes trapped in what appears to be a spider web suspended in the air. Slowly, a creature with enormous fangs approaches him, apparently intending to devour him and wrap him in its web. Suddenly, the translator disc multiplies and lands on the being, allowing a high-pitched child's voice to be heard, apologizing for having scared him. It explains that it only wrapped him up so that he would not be afraid. When Elio realizes that he is talking to another child, he believes that Helio is mocking him and leaves. However, he soon reconsiders and decides to approach him, wanting to meet him and ask him to free him. Excited, the little alien introduces himself as Glorden and confesses that no one had ever asked him his name or anything about him. He frees him, and they both soon meet one of the local soldiers. Glorden explains that it is not just any soldier but his personal armor, custom designed for when he comes of age. It is equipped with all kinds of defenses and even has a cup holder. This leads Helio to deduce that all those fearsome soldiers are nothing more than creatures like Glorden hiding behind war armor. Just at that moment, an alarm sounds throughout the compound, announcing the prisoner's escape. Alarmed, Glorden realizes that Elio is the fugitive and asks him what happened. Helio confesses the truth. He is just a child who was mistaken for the leader of the planet Earth and now carries an enormous responsibility on his shoulders. If he doesn't find something to negotiate with Gregan, all will be lost. Glorden quickly tells him that his father values suffering and fighting. When Elio discovers that his new friend is actually the son of Lord Gregan and asks him to offer himself as a bargaining chip, the innocent alien enthusiastically accepts, excited to be of interest to his father again. He even asks them if his parents also ignore him most of the time, to which the alien, moved, replies that he feels that his Aunt Olga does not love him and that without him in her life she could fulfill her dream of being an astronaut. But Glorden does not agree. He tells him that Olga undoubtedly loves him very much since she gave up her dreams for him. Still, the human does not believe it. He is convinced that she will be freer without his presence since she will finally be able to do whatever she wants while he remains in the communityverse. During his journey, the ambassadors contact him to make sure that everything is under control since suddenly the cannons of his ship are pointed towards them. Elio replies that it is only a drill and assures that everything is fine, but as soon as he finishes the call, he continues on his way more quickly. At that moment, he asks him what those tunnels are for, and the alien explains that they are lava channels used to feed the cannons. Looking back, the boy realizes that the lava is approaching quickly and unlike Glorden, he is not immune to it. The small alien asks him to get into his mouth to protect him. And although at first it seems like a terrible idea, it is the only way to survive. They quickly manage to get outside and board the ship to return with the ambassadors. Although the landing is not exactly smooth, Elio contacts Gregan and informs him that the negotiation is not over yet because he now has something extremely valuable to him. He shows him that his son is no longer safe on the ship. When the feared alien sees that Glorden is in public without his armor, he feels dishonored and hurt. His desperation increases when Elio begins to torture him with tickles, which leads Griggen, humiliated, to accept his conditions. Thus, he agrees to search for his son in exchange for leaving the communityverse in peace. When the communication ends, the ambassadors celebrate enthusiastically. The threat has been neutralized. They assure Elio that once the conflict is completely resolved, he will be officially welcomed as a member of the Galactic Organization. Left alone with Glorden shows him the wonders of the translator device that also works as a heater and anti-gravity tool. So, they both decide to spend hours playing and exploring every corner of the place together, amazed by everything they discover. They enjoy every second and even try to create an exclusive greeting between them. In a moment of sincerity, our protagonists begin to talk about their emotions. Elio confesses that he feels that his aunt does not care and that he wants to forget her as soon as possible, especially after the death of his parents. This leads Glorden to open up to his mother is almost never present since she is a warrior, and feels that his father only takes care of him out of obligation. Elio begins to convince himself that maybe there is nothing about him that anyone could love. He feels confused, wondering if the problem is him and not the planet Earth. However, Glorden assures him that he does like him. When his father arrives at the base, they both notice that he has brought the armor. Glorden admits that he is not enthusiastic about putting it on, since once he is wearing it, he will have to fight like everyone else. He knows that it will mark the end of his childhood. He will no longer be able to play or do what he likes, and although he has no choice because it is a tradition, he fears that his father will despise him if he refuses. Wanting to help his friend Elio, he has an idea to clone him to show him that his plan will work. He quickly observes his own clone on Earth and realizes that it is having fun with its aunt Olga. Although at first he is discouraged seeing the scene, he soon obtains a sample of Glorden's DNA so that he too can enjoy his childhood, while his copy puts on the armor and assumes the role of warrior for the rest of his life. Quickly, Elio hides his friend in the ship and presents the clone in front. Meanwhile, on Earth, Elio's copy has managed to win his aunt's heart, and they now seem to get along much better. However, Olga always suspected that something was wrong. Taking advantage of the moment when he kisses her goodnight, she manages to take one of his hairs to examine it, convinced that her nephew couldn't have changed so much from one day to the next. When she observes the hair under a microscope, she doesn't notice anything out of the ordinary. However, when she's not looking, the hair begins to move on its own. Trying to reunite with the rest of the clone, Olga, horrified, follows him to the boy's room where she finds him sleeping peacefully. However, when the hair returns to his body, it begins to vibrate. Alarmed, the woman removes the eye patch to check if he is okay, and discovers with horror that the eye has disappeared and that her nephew has something to tell him. At the same time, in space, Lord Griggen begins to grow impatient with his son's absence, but soon the little boy appears before him, assuring him that he was very well treated during his stay. Griggen asks him if he is ready to become a true warrior, brave and capable of fighting countless battles. The clone answers affirmatively without hesitation. Without wasting any more time, he approaches his dreaded spiked armor to transform into another formidable combatant. This scene shocks everyone present in the communityverse until the small alien proves comfortable inside the armor, thus managing to calm the spirits. Just as he had promised, Lord Griggen withdraws without causing problems, satisfied to have his son back without a single scratch. However, as they walk towards the ship, he asks him if he is ready. When the supposed Glorden enthusiastically responds that he is eager to kick some ass, his father begins to suspect that something is wrong. Meanwhile, Elio is officially accepted into the Intergalactic Organization as one of its ambassadors. But just as he is about to receive his insignia, a loud bang interrupts the ceremony. Glorden's armor has exploded, as Griggen has finally discovered that this was not his real son. He immediately orders the ambassador to read the boy's mind to discover where his son is hiding. Thus, the truth comes to light. By sending his men to search the area, the real Glorden realizes what is happening and accidentally activates the diplomatic ship in an attempt to flee, setting a course for Earth. By reading Elio's mind, the ambassador also realized that he is not the leader of Earth or anything else. He is just a human child. They then decide to open the portal to return him to where he truly belongs. Although our protagonist tries to defend his word, the entire communityverse soon suffers Griggen's fury. Upon discovering that his son is not where he was promised, the alien becomes enraged and declares his intention to destroy the organization to take control because he has been deceived. Chaos immediately breaks out. Elio, overwhelmed by guilt, feels responsible for having ruined everything. Everyone considers him a traitor and a liar, since the entire community reality faces the consequences for his actions. However, before Griggin can reach him, the ambassador intervenes and pushes the child towards the portal, saving his life. Elio crashes into the violent waters of his city, and when the waves drag him towards the shore, he looks at his house with discouragement. His space adventure has come to an end. He even notices that his aunt seems to get along better with his clone than with him. Watching them contemplate the stars together at midnight, he decides to walk away quietly, but at one point Olga confuses him and asks him to come closer. Noticing a certain stress in her expression, Elio gets worried and asks her if she is okay. She honestly confesses that she is not really. Indirectly makes him see that she feels the same as him, alone without any support. The only difference is that she doesn't show it. When our protagonist answers that he understands her perfectly, Olga realizes that that is her nephew. To confirm it, she removes the eye patch and discovers with relief that she is in front of the real Elio. She confesses that during his absence she missed every part of him. While they share that beautiful moment, the copy of Helio arrives to warn them that something strange is happening at the military base. Then we see hundreds of patrols and several helicopters flying over the area. Our protagonist soon realizes that everyone is guarding the spaceship that he himself piloted hours before. At that moment, his clone, that if they no longer need it, will begin to decompose. But before he can continue, both Olga and Elio have an idea and stop him. They soon cause Helio's clone to scare two soldiers guarding one of the entrances, literally decomposing in their arms and causing a commotion that allows them to enter the base. There, researchers try to open the ship, but when it proves impossible, they decide to look for other methods. However, while the ship is momentarily unattended, Olga, wearing a special suit and carrying Elio with her, approaches the device and manages to access its interior using her fingerprint. Inside, they find Glorden shivering from the cold. His gravitational disk and temperature system are severely damaged. At that precise moment, Olga's superiors appear to stop them, but she communicates in code with her nephew using an alien language, and together they manage to overpower the soldiers in order to escape. Elio immediately activates the spaceship, and they fly off into space at impressive speed. They cross the stratosphere until they reach cosmos. However, they soon face a major problem. A dense concentration of galactic debris threatens to bring down the ship, preventing them from activating hyperdrive to reach the communityverse. Olga cannot contact any of her colleagues in the land that can guide them, and given the urgency of the situation, the boy decides to call Breeze for help. At first, the boy doesn't understand what's happening, but upon recognizing Elio's voice, he apologizes for Caleb's behavior. For his part, our protagonist also regrets his own actions, although there is no time to throw them out because their lives are in constant danger since they don't know where the space debris is coming from. Bryce admits that he doesn't know much about physics or interplanetary navigation, but he knows someone who does. Melmac, who reappears attentive to the microphone, ready to guide them in whatever they need, and his aunt set their course for Orion's belt. From Earth, their friend becomes their eyes in the dark void of space, helping them avoid a fatal collision. However, the distance between them limits the effectiveness of the connection, and at a certain point they lose communication. Now they fly blind. Various fragments of space debris begin to impact the ship, and our protagonists have no choice but to resist and hope for the worst. However, people from all over the world, experts in calculating the trajectory of space debris, begin to collaborate to help Elio to get back on course and overcome every obstacle in their path. Even when one of these enormous structures suddenly appears in front of them, Olga reacts quickly and manages to maneuver the ship, avoiding just enough to survive. Once this danger is over, they must hurry. Glorden is getting weaker and needs urgent assistance. They activate hyperdrive towards the communityverse, and upon arriving hastily, they discover that Griggin's troops have taken complete control of the place and have subdued the ambassadors. When little Glorden leaves the ship, he shows no signs of life, does not respond to his father's calls or those of Elio, who cries inconsolably, fearing to lose his only friend. In an impulsive act, his father is about to hit him, but in reality, he only destroys his own armor to free himself from his shell and wrap his son in a network of cobwebs, providing him with the warmth his body needs, putting aside the dishonor of showing himself publicly without protection. In a matter of seconds, little Glorden begins to show signs of life that reassure everyone, confirming that he is fine. Immediately, the human's other translators are received, and Lord Griggin demands an explanation of what happened. Our protagonist approaches his friend, who gathers the courage to confess to his father that he does not really want to be a war machine, something he already suspected deep down. Despite everything, Griggin expresses how much he loves him and with great effort apologizes to everyone in the communityverse, demanding that they be released. When the ambassador approaches Elio again, She offers him the title of Earth Ambassador to her galactic organization, recognizing that despite his mistakes, he was willing to sacrifice himself to save others and behaved like a true leader, thus earning his place in the communityverse. This news fills Elio with joy, however. For his Aunt Olga, the perspective is different, as it means that she will have to move away from her nephew and return to Earth alone. Realizing this, Elio's smile fades, as he must decide between staying there or returning to his aunt. Finally, he chooses to resign his position in the communityverse, no matter how much he loves her, as he wants to give his life on Earth a new chance with Olga, recognizing that they are all family. Ambassadors understand his decision and remind him that he is unique on the entire planet, but now he knows that he is not alone. With a last hug, he says goodbye to his friend, and finally, together with his aunt, they return to house taken directly by their intergalactic allies who reveal themselves to all of humanity for the first time.